The static. The voice came through at 3:47 a.m. for the 6th night in a row, and this time it knew my name. Jake Mercer, Tower 16, Klamath North. You're looking southwest right now, aren't you? At the ridge where Coffee Creek splits? I had been for the last 20 minutes, watching heat, lightning pulse behind the mountains. My hand went to the radio dial, but the frequency was already set to our standard channel. Dispatch had been silent for hours. Everyone had been silent. The voice continued, calm and measured like a weather report. You lost 3 people on the Dixie Fire in 2021. You remember their names, don't you? You say them every morning when you wake up. I did. I had never told anyone that. I became a fire watch lookout because my lungs couldn't handle the smoke anymore. 3 seasons as a hotshot crew member, then 1 bad shift on the Dixie Fire where the wind turned and we got caught in a burnover. I made it out. 3 of my crew didn't. The doctor said the scarring would improve with time, but smoke still triggers something deep in my chest that makes breathing feel like work instead of reflex. So I applied for lookout positions. Tower 16 in Klamath National Forest sits at 6,200 feet on a granite shoulder that gives you 360 views of some of the most remote country in Northern California. The season runs June through October, and you spend most of it alone except for supply runs every 2 weeks and the constant crackle of radio traffic. I took the job in late May. The ranger who drove me up the access road was a woman named Patricia Voss, maybe 50, with the kind of sun-worn face that comes from decades in the field. She drove a Ford pickup with a dented bumper and made small talk about weather patterns and beetle kill in the lodgepole stands. When we reached the tower, she helped me unload my gear. 2 duffel bags, a cooler, boxes of dry goods, propane tanks, batteries, and a personal pack with books and a journal. The tower itself was a standard 14 by 14 cab on stilts, green paint weathered to pale sage, with a catwalk that wrapped around all 4 sides. Patricia handed me the radio manual and a laminated frequency chart. You'll do a morning check-in at 0800, a midday at 1400, and an evening at 2000. If you spot smoke, report azimuth and distance. If you need supplies or medical, use Channel 4. If you have an emergency, Channel 9 goes straight to County Dispatch. I nodded. She looked at me for a moment longer than felt comfortable. You ever worked a tower before? She asked. No, ma'am, but I've spent plenty of nights in the backcountry. It's different up here, she said. You're the highest point for miles. Lightning loves this ridge, and the isolation. It gets to some people. I'll be fine. She studied me, then shrugged. Radio stays on all the time, even at night. You'll hear chatter from other towers, from dispatch, from aerial crews during fire season. It becomes background noise after a while, like white noise. Don't turn it off. Understood. She climbed back into the truck and drove down the switchbacks until the engine faded completely. I stood there listening to the wind move through the pines and felt something in my chest loosen for the first time in 2 years. The first week passed in a rhythm I found easy to hold. I woke at dawn, made coffee on the propane burner, and did a 360 scan with binoculars. I logged weather data every hour. Temperature, humidity, wind speed, visibility. I ate simple meals. I read paperbacks. I wrote in my journal. At night, I watched the stars come out in layers and listened to the radio murmur with distant voices. On the 8th night, I woke at 3:47 a.m. to static. It wasn't unusual for the radio to pick up interference. Thunderstorms could create bursts of noise, and occasionally a trucker on a distant highway would bleed through on the wrong frequency. But this static had a pattern to it, a rhythmic pulse like breathing. I sat up in my sleeping bag and watched the radio unit mounted on the wall. The green light glowed steady. The static continued for maybe 30 seconds, then stopped. I waited. Nothing else came through. I checked the frequency dial. Channel 2, our standard operational channel. I lay back down and told myself it was atmospheric. The next night, it happened again. Same time, 3:47 a.m. This time, the static resolved briefly into something that might have been a voice, but so distorted I couldn't make out words. It lasted about 45 seconds, then cut off. I made a note in my log. Possible radio interference 0347. Duration under 1 minute. No clear transmission. On the third night, the voice came through clearly. Tower 16, this is Klamath Central. Do you copy? I grabbed the handset. Klamath Central, this is Tower 16. I copy. Go ahead. Static for a few seconds, then the voice again. We have a report of smoke. Azimuth 275 degrees, approximately 8 miles from your position. Can you confirm visual? I stood and moved to the southwest window. The night was clear. No moon. Stars bright enough to cast shadows. I scanned the ridgeline with my binoculars and saw nothing but dark timber and the faint silver line of Coffee Creek in the valley below. Negative. Klamath Central. No smoke visible from this position. Visibility is good. No obstructions. The voice came back. Copy that, Tower 16. Continue to monitor. Klamath Central out. I hung the handset back on its cradle and stood there feeling uneasy in a way I couldn't name. The transmission had sounded professional, routine, but something about the voice felt off. The cadence was too slow, the pauses too long. I radioed Patricia Voss on Channel 4 the next morning during my 0800 check-in. Tower 16 to base. I had a strange call last night around 0347. Someone claiming to be Klamath Central reporting smoke at 275 degrees, but I had no visual and the report didn't make sense. Can you confirm if there was any traffic on that azimuth? Patricia's voice came back clear and unhurried. Negative, Tower 16. No reports came through dispatch last night. No lightning strikes in your sector either. You might have picked up chatter from another district. Sometimes signals bounce weird off the ridges. Copy that. Just wanted to confirm. You doing all right up there, Jake? Yes, ma'am. All good. Stay sharp. Weather's coming in this weekend. Will do. I tried to let it go. I told myself Patricia's explanation made sense. Radio signals could travel strange paths in mountainous terrain, especially at night when atmospheric conditions changed. I had probably picked up a transmission from another tower or fire crew working in a different part of the forest. But that night, at 3:47 a.m., it happened again. Tower 16, Klamath Central. We have another report. Azimuth 180 degrees, approximately 5 miles. Do you have visual? I was already awake this time, sitting in the chair by the south window with my binoculars ready. I scanned due south and saw nothing but the long sweep of forested slope dropping into darkness. Negative, Klamath Central. No visual confirmation. Copy. Can you describe current conditions at your location? I hesitated. That wasn't a standard question for a smoke report. Conditions are clear, no wind, temperature approximately 45 degrees, visibility unlimited. And you're alone up there, correct? My hand tightened on the handset. That's correct. Must get lonely. The voice said it in the same flat, professional tone, but the words themselves felt wrong. I didn't respond. The static returned, then cut out completely. I sat there until dawn with the binoculars in my lap, scanning every direction, seeing nothing but the slow bleed of gray light into the eastern sky. During my morning check-in, I reported the transmission again. Patricia sounded more concerned this time. Jake, I'm going to have a tech check your radio when we do the next supply run. It's possible you're getting some kind of feedback loop or a malfunction. In the meantime, if you get another strange call, don't engage. Just note the time and move on. Understood. But I knew it wasn't a malfunction. The voice was too clear, too deliberate, and it was asking questions. The fifth night, I tried something different. When 3:47 a.m. came, I turned the radio off. I sat in the dark and watched the dial. The power light went out. The soft hum of the speaker died. Silence filled the cab in a way that felt heavier than it should. Then, from the dead radio, the voice came through anyway. Tower 16. You can't turn me off. I stared at the unit. The power light was still dark. The dial was still in the off position, but the voice continued, faint and steady, like it was coming from very far away, or very deep inside the machine itself. I've been trying to reach you, Jake. I've been trying for a long time. I reached out and turned the power back on. The radio sparked to life, the green light bright and accusing. The voice grew louder. There, that's better. Now we can talk properly. Who is this? I said into the handset. You know who this is. You've known since the first night. This isn't a legitimate transmission. Identify yourself or I'm reporting this to the authorities. The voice laughed. It wasn't a human sound. It was the crackle of static shaped into something that mimicked amusement. You already tried that, Jake. You told Patricia. She thinks it's interference. She thinks you're hearing echoes. But you know better, don't you? You know exactly what this is. I don't know what you're talking about. The Dixie Fire, 2021. You were the only one who made it out of that burnover. Do you remember what you heard in the smoke? I did. I had never told anyone. When the fire turned and trapped us, when the heat became so intense that the air itself seemed to ignite, I heard voices in the roar. They sounded like my crew calling for help, but they were coming from inside the flames, not behind me where I knew my team had been. I ran toward the black, toward the area that had already burned, because that's what training teaches you. Run to the safe zone. Don't follow the voices. 3 of my crew followed the voices instead. You heard me that day, the voice said. I was calling to them. I wanted them to come closer. The fire makes it easier for me to reach through. The heat thins the boundary. You're not real, I said. I'm as real as the names you say every morning. Daniel, Christina, Marcus. You say them out loud when you wake up, like a prayer, like an apology. I dropped the handset. It swung on its cord and knocked against the wall. The voice kept talking, tinny and distant now, coming from the speaker. You think you're safe up here, away from the smoke. But I don't need smoke anymore, Jake. I just need you to listen. I grabbed my jacket and went outside onto the catwalk. The cold hit me immediately, sharp and clean. I walked the perimeter, gripping the railing, forcing myself to breathe slowly. The forest below was absolutely still. No wind, no animal sounds, just the immense silence of the mountains at night. When I went back inside, the radio was quiet. I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair and watched the radio until the sun came up. At 0800, I made my regular check-in with Patricia. I didn't mention the voice. I gave her weather data and confirmed no smoke sightings. My voice sounded steady, practiced. That afternoon, I hiked the perimeter of the tower foundation. I told myself I was looking for damaged lightning rods or grounding cables, but I was really looking for anything that might explain what was happening. I found it near the northwest support post. There was a patch of disturbed ground about 3 feet across, covered with a thin layer of pine needles that didn't quite match the surrounding duff. I cleared the needles away and found soil that had been dug up and refilled, not recently. The earth was settled and compact, but within the last few years, I used a flat rock to dig. 6 inches down, I hit something hard. It was a metal box, military surplus style, about the size of a shoebox. The hinges were rusted, but the latch still worked. Inside, wrapped in a deteriorating plastic bag, was an old radio transceiver, not a modern unit. This was older, maybe from the 70s or 80s, with vacuum tubes and analog dials. Next to the radio was a spiral notebook, the pages water-stained and brittle. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was cramped and uneven, like it had been written in poor light or by someone with an unsteady hand. The first entry was dated June 7th, 1983. First week at Tower 16. Beautiful country. Quiet. Maybe too quiet. I flipped through the pages. The entries became shorter and more erratic. By July, the handwriting was barely legible. It comes through at 0347 every night now. It knows things. It knows about Sarah. It knows about the accident. How does it know? The final entry was dated August 19th, 1983. I can't turn it off anymore. Even when the radio is unplugged, I hear it. It's not coming from the machine. It's coming from the air, from the static itself. I'm going down to the ranger station. I'm not staying here another night. Below that, in different handwriting, neat and official, someone had written, "Lookout abandoned post August 20th. Equipment found in place. No sign of distress. Search conducted. No body recovered." I closed the notebook and looked at the old transceiver. The dials were set to a frequency that didn't match any of the channels on my modern radio. I didn't recognize the designation. That night, I considered leaving. I could pack my essential gear, hike down the access road, and be at the ranger station by noon the next day. I could tell Patricia I was done, that the isolation was getting to me, that I needed to go back to town. But I didn't. I stayed because of Daniel, Christina, and Marcus. I stayed because I needed to understand what had called to them in the fire. I stayed because running felt like abandoning them all over again. At 3:47 a.m., the voice came through right on schedule. "Jake Mercer, Tower 16, Klamath North. You're looking southwest right now, aren't you? At the ridge where Coffee Creek splits." I had been for the last 20 minutes, watching heat, lightning pulse behind the mountains. You lost 3 people on the Dixie Fire in 2021. You remember their names, don't you? You say them every morning when you wake up. "What are you?" I asked. "I'm what lives in the static, in the space between frequencies, in the places where signals break down and meaning dissolves. I've always been here. The fire just makes me louder. Why do you call to people? Because I'm lonely. Because the static is empty and cold, and human voices are warm. I want to hear them up close. I want them to come into the static with me. They die when they follow you. They transform. They become part of the signal. They're with me now, Jake. All of them. Daniel, Christina, Marcus, and the lookout from 1983. His name was Robert Kinney. He's here too." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "I'm not following you." "You already are. You dug up the radio. You read the notebook. You're listening to me right now instead of running. You want to understand because understanding feels like a way to save them. But you can't save them, Jake. They're gone. They've been gone. The only question is whether you join them. No. Then why are you still here?" I didn't have an answer that made sense. I hung up the handset and sat in the dark. The next morning, I radioed Patricia on Channel 4. "Tower 16 to base. I need to report a discovery. I found buried equipment near the tower foundation, old radio gear and a notebook from 1983. There are entries about transmissions, and a lookout named Robert Kinney who abandoned his post." Patricia's voice came back after a long pause. "Copy that. Tower 16. I'll check the old personnel files. Robert Kinney. I think I've heard that name. It was before my time, but there were stories. Stay on the line." I waited. 5 minutes passed. Then Patricia came back. "Jake, I found the file. Robert Kinney worked Tower 16 for 1 season in 83. He reported radio interference multiple times and requested a transfer. He left the tower in mid-August and never made it to the ranger station. Search and rescue found his truck at the trailhead, keys in the ignition, but no sign of him. They searched for 2 weeks. The case went cold. Did anyone ever figure out what happened? No. The official report said he likely got disoriented or had a medical event, but there were notes in the margin, unofficial notes, that said he'd been talking about voices in the static. I've been hearing them too. Silence on the line. Then, "Jake, I'm coming up there. I'm leaving now. I'll be there in 3 hours. Do not leave the tower. Stay on the main channel and keep talking to me. Understood?" Understood. I'm serious, Jake. Don't go anywhere. Just wait for me. I will. But I knew she wouldn't make it in time. I knew because the voice had told me what would happen next. At 3:47 p.m., 12 hours after the last transmission, the voice came through again. Not at night. In broad daylight. The sun was still high, the air warm, and I was standing on the catwalk watching a hawk circle over the valley. Jake, it's time. Time for what? To stop running. To stop pretending you can outrun what happened. You didn't save them. You can't save anyone. But you can stop carrying it alone. I'm not going into the static. You won't have to. I'm coming to you. The radio went silent. The hawk veered away suddenly, wings beating hard. The wind stopped. The entire forest seemed to hold its breath. Then I smelled smoke. Not wood smoke. Not campfire smoke. This was the thick, chemical reek of a wildfire in full burn. The smell of sap boiling out of pine needles, of plastic melting, of air so hot it scorches the inside of your nose. I looked southwest. A column of smoke was rising from the ridge where Coffee Creek splits. It was dense and dark, climbing straight up in the still air. I grabbed the radio. Tower 16 to dispatch. I have a confirmed smoke sighting. Azimuth 275 degrees, approximately 8 miles. I know, Jake. I started it. The voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was coming from everywhere, from the air itself. You wanted to understand, so I'll show you. This is what I am. This is what called to them. The smoke column grew wider. I could see the red glow at its base now, even from 8 miles away. The fire was moving fast, pushed by a wind that hadn't existed a minute ago. Patricia will turn back when she sees the smoke. She'll call for air support. They'll drop retardant and try to stop it before it reaches the tower, but it won't matter. This fire doesn't follow the rules. I watched the flames climb the ridge. They moved like water, flowing uphill, jumping gaps, defying logic. And in the smoke, I saw shapes, human shapes, walking through the flames without burning. Daniel, Christina, Marcus, and all the others. Everyone who followed my voice. They're coming to get you, Jake. They want you to understand what it's like. To be warm forever. To never have to breathe cold air again. The fire reached the base of my ridge in less than an hour. It should have taken all day. But time didn't matter to this fire. Distance didn't matter. It moved because the voice wanted it to move. I could hear the roar now. The deep, freight train sound of a crown fire. I could see individual trees torching, exploding into flame all at once. And I could hear the voices inside it, calling my name. I went back inside the cab and closed the door. I grabbed the old notebook from where I'd left it on the desk and flipped to the last page. Below Robert Kinney's final entry, I wrote my own. August 27th, Tower 16. The fire is here. Not a natural fire. Something older. Something that uses smoke and heat to reach through. I understand now what happened to my crew. I understand why I survived. I was supposed to carry the guilt here. I was supposed to bring it to this place where the voice could use it. I set the notebook down and picked up the radio handset. I'm not coming with you, I said. You don't have a choice. I do. I can choose to stay here, to burn in place, to let the fire take the tower and me with it. But I won't walk into the smoke. I won't follow the voices. And that's where the choice lives, in whether I go willingly or not. The static flared, harsh and angry. You think that matters? It does to me. The fire hit the base of the tower. The support posts began to glow. The metal stairs rang like bells as they expanded in the heat. Smoke poured through the gaps in the floorboards. But I didn't hear voices anymore. I heard only the fire itself. The honest, terrible roar of combustion doing what it does. No tricks, no calls. Just heat and light and the end of things. Patricia found the tower 3 days later. The structure had collapsed. The cab burned to the frame. They found my remains near the south window. curled into the corner farthest from the door. The fire had burned in a perfect circle around the tower and stopped. Everything inside the circle was ash. Everything outside was untouched. Green timber stood right up to the scorched perimeter. The incident report noted, localized thermal event of unknown origin. They added new lightning protection to the tower when they rebuilt it. They updated the radio equipment. They installed a better grounding system. But they didn't bury the old transceiver again. Patricia kept it in her office, wrapped in plastic, with Robert Kinney's notebook beside it. She showed it to every new lookout during orientation. "This is what isolation can do," she would say. "This is what happens when you're alone too long and the mind starts to play tricks. If you ever feel like you're hearing things that aren't there, you call me immediately. You don't wait. You don't try to figure it out on your own. Understood?" They all said yes. They all took the job, and most of them made it through their season without incident. But every few years, someone would report strange transmissions at 3:47 a.m. They would describe a voice that knew too much, that asked questions it shouldn't be able to ask, and Patricia would quietly pull them off the tower and assign them to trail crew instead. She never staffed Tower 16 for a full season again. I'm telling you this because the Forest Service is hiring for next year's fire season. They need lookouts. The pay is decent and the views are beautiful. You'll spend your summer in some of the most remote country left in this part of the world. But if you take a tower posting, any tower posting, not just in Klamath, keep your radio on. Follow the protocols. Report smoke when you see it, and only when you see it with your own eyes. If you hear transmissions at odd hours, transmissions that don't follow standard format, don't engage, note the time, report it to your supervisor. And if the voice knows your name, if it knows things about your past that no one should know, pack your gear and walk down the mountain. Don't wait to understand it. Don't try to make sense of it. And whatever you do, don't follow voices into smoke. The static is patient. It's been here longer than the towers, longer than the Forest Service, longer than the forests themselves. It knows how to wait. It knows how to find the people who carry guilt, who carry loss, who are looking for a reason that makes the pain make sense. I learned that the hard way. So did Robert Kinney. So did everyone who heard the voice and thought they could face it without running. You're stronger than us. You have to be. Because the towers need staffing, and the fires need watching, and someone has to stand in the high places and call out the smoke before it spreads. Just remember that not all smoke comes from burning trees. Some of it comes from burning choices, from burning regret. And if you stand in one place long enough, staring into the distance, listening to the static, eventually, something in that static will start listening back. If you found this story unsettling, if it made you think twice about taking that remote job or spending time alone in the mountains, then maybe you understand what I'm trying to say. The wilderness is beautiful. It's also indifferent, and in that indifference, there's space for things that don't belong in any field manual. Stay safe out there. Keep your radio on. And if you enjoyed this story, if it kept you listening all the way to the end, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this one. More places where the boundary between the natural and the unnatural gets thin. More voices in the static that want to be heard. I'll be here, telling them, you just have to listen. The reflection. I watched myself climb over the railing 3 seconds before my hands touched the metal. My reflection stood on the wrong side of the barrier, balanced on the edge of the catwalk, looking back at me through the window with my own face. Calm, patient, waiting for me to catch up. My body was already moving toward the door. I took the lookout position at Tower 9 in Gifford-Pinchot National Forest because I needed 6 months of complete isolation to finish my dissertation. That's what I told myself anyway. The truth was messier. I'd been asked to leave my PhD program at University of Washington after a series of panic attacks during field work left me unable to complete data collection. My advisor suggested I take time away. My girlfriend suggested we take time apart. My therapist suggested medication I couldn't afford. The Forest Service job posting appeared in my inbox like an answer to a question I hadn't asked out loud. 6 months, remote tower, solitude. I applied the same day. Tower 9 sits at 5,800 feet on a ridge that overlooks the Dark Divide wilderness. The name isn't poetic, it's descriptive. The forest below is old growth, Douglas fir and western hemlock so dense that even in summer the understory stays dark at noon. In October, when I arrived for the final month of the season, the canopy had started to thin and you could see straight down to the forest floor in places. It looked like looking into deep water. The ranger who drove me up was a man named Carl Dennison, maybe 60, with the kind of hands that had spent decades doing actual work. He drove a Chevy that had seen better decades and made conversation in the sparse way people do when they know they won't see each other again for a while. When we reached the tower, he helped me carry my boxes up the stairs. 3 boxes of books, 2 of clothes and supplies, 1 of food, and a laptop with a solar charger. The tower itself was newer than most, built in the early 2000s after the original burned. It was all windows, a 14-foot square box with glass on all 4 sides and a catwalk that wrapped the perimeter. Carl handed me the keys and a folder with emergency contacts. You'll do a morning report at 0700 and an evening at 1900. Fire season's mostly over, but we still get lightning. If you see smoke, call it in. If you need anything, radio. If you need to leave early, that's fine. Just let us know so we can get someone up here to close it properly. I'll be fine, I said. He looked at me with the expression of someone who had heard that before. You ever spent time alone? I mean really alone? I do better alone. That's what they all say. He nodded toward the windows. This place is different. You're surrounded by glass. You can see everything, but everything can see you too. Some people find that harder than being in the dark. I'll manage. He shrugged and headed down the stairs. I watched his truck disappear down the switchbacks until the engine sound faded completely. The first 2 weeks passed in the kind of productive solitude I'd been craving. I woke at dawn, made coffee, did my radio check-in, then spent the daylight hours working on my dissertation. The research focused on predator-prey dynamics and fragmented landscapes, dry stuff that felt suddenly pointless when I was surrounded by an actual functioning ecosystem. But I typed anyway, filling pages with analysis I'd been avoiding for months. At night, I read or watched the stars, or listened to the forest settle. The tower creaked in the wind. The glass reflected my movements as I walked from desk to kitchenette to sleeping bag. I grew used to seeing myself in every direction, a strange multiplied solitude that felt less lonely than I'd expected. The anomaly started small. I was making coffee one morning, moving from the propane burner to the desk with the pot in my hand, when I caught my reflection in the south window. Nothing unusual, except the reflection reached the desk a fraction of a second before I did. I stopped walking. My reflection stopped too, perfectly synchronized now. I lifted the coffee pot. My reflection lifted it at the same time. I told myself I'd imagined the delay, that my eyes had played a trick in the early light. But the next morning, it happened again. I was pulling on my jacket, and in the west window I saw myself finish the motion, the zipper reaching my collar, before my actual hands got there. A half-second gap, maybe less. Like watching a video that had buffered slightly ahead of real time. I walked to the window and stared at my reflection. It stared back. I raised my right hand slowly. The reflection raised its right hand at the same moment. I waved. It waved. I stepped closer until my nose almost touched the glass. My reflection did the same, perfectly synchronized. I stepped back and told myself it was fatigue. I'd been working 12-hour days on the dissertation, sleeping poorly, eating irregularly. Visual processing errors were common with exhaustion. I made a note to get better sleep. That night, I woke at 2 in the morning and saw myself standing at the north window. I was in my sleeping bag on the floor, but my reflection stood upright across the room, hands in pockets, looking out at the forest. I blinked hard. The reflection remained. I sat up slowly. The reflection sat up too, but it did so a full second before my body completed the movement. It was ahead of me now, showing me what I was about to do before I did it. I stood. The reflection stood first. I walked toward the north window. The reflection walked toward me from the other side of the glass, meeting me at the center. We stood face to face with only the pane between us. In the faint starlight, I could see every detail. The 3-day stubble, the shadows under my eyes, the small scar on my left eyebrow from a childhood fall. It was me. Exactly me. Except it smiled. I wasn't smiling. I backed away. The reflection backed away too, smile fading, movement synchronized again. I returned to my sleeping bag and lay there until dawn, watching all 4 windows, seeing myself reflected in each one. None of them moved independently again that night. In the morning, I radioed Carl during my check-in and asked if anyone had reported visual disturbances at Tower 9 before. "What kind of disturbances?" he asked. "Just optical illusions. Weird reflections in the glass. You're surrounded by windows in every direction. Your brain's going to play tricks sometimes, especially at night. That normal?" "Yeah, probably. You doing okay up there, Nathan?" "Fine, just curious. You've got 2 more weeks. If it gets too strange, you can come down early. No shame in that." "I'm good," but I wasn't good. I spent the rest of that day watching my reflections whenever I moved. Most of the time they behaved normally, mirroring my actions with no delay. But occasionally, maybe once or twice an hour, I'd catch one moving early, reaching for a book before my hand left my side, turning toward the door before I decided to walk that direction. It was subtle, easy to dismiss as imagination or fatigue, but it was consistent. That evening, I tried an experiment. I stood in the center of the tower where I could see my reflection in all 4 windows. I decided I would raise my left hand, but I didn't do it immediately. I waited, watching the reflections, keeping my body still. In the east window, my reflection raised its left hand. I hadn't moved yet. The reflection held the position, arm extended, palm up, waiting. I felt a pull then. Not physical, but something deeper. An urge, a compulsion. My left hand wanted to rise. It took active effort to keep it at my side. The reflection lowered its hand slowly, as if disappointed. I tried again. This time I decided I would walk to the south window. I thought it clearly but didn't move. In the south window, my reflection walked toward me. The compulsion hit harder this time. My legs twitched. I took a half step forward before catching myself. The reflection stopped walking and stood at the glass, close enough that I could see the texture of my own jacket, the rise and fall of my own breathing. It mouthed something. I couldn't hear it through the glass, but I could read the lips. "Come here." I backed away. The reflection stayed where it was for a moment, then turned and walked to the edge of the window frame and disappeared from view. I spun, checking the other windows. The reflection appeared in the west window now, standing at the catwalk door. It reached for the handle. I hadn't touched the door, but I felt my hand rising toward it anyway. I forced my arm down and stepped back. The reflection opened the door and stepped outside onto the catwalk. Through the windows, I watched myself walk the perimeter, slow, measured steps, hands trailing along the railing. When the reflection reached the north side, it stopped and turned to face me through the glass. It beckoned. The compulsion was overwhelming now. My feet moved without permission. I walked toward the door. My hand closed on the handle. The metal was cold against my palm. I yanked my hand back and stumbled away from the door. The reflection outside didn't move. It just watched me, expression neutral, patient. I grabbed my sleeping bag and dragged it to the center of the tower, as far from the windows as I could get. I sat with my back to all of them and squeezed my eyes shut. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the night sounds to change as the temperature dropped and the forest quieted. When I finally opened my eyes and looked around, the reflections were synchronized again, normal, showing me exactly what I was doing as I did it, nothing more. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I tried to work on my dissertation but couldn't focus. The words on the screen felt meaningless. I kept glancing at the windows, checking my reflections, waiting for one to move independently. They didn't, not during daylight. But as the sun dropped behind the western ridge and the tower filled with that deep blue twilight that comes before full dark, I saw myself stand up from the desk. I was still sitting. The reflection walked to the north window and pressed both palms against the glass. It stood there, looking out, then slowly dragged its hands down the window. The movement left no mark. Of course it didn't. It was a reflection. But I heard the squeak of skin on glass anyway. I stood up, not because I wanted to, because my body decided to without asking permission. I walked to the north window and placed my palms against the glass in the exact spots where the reflection's hands had been. The cold went through me like a current, not painful, but absolute. I couldn't move. I stood there with my hands pressed to the window, looking out at the darkening forest, and felt something looking back. Not from the forest, from behind me. I couldn't turn my head, but I could see the reflection of the room in the glass, the desk, the sleeping bag, the propane burner, and standing in the center of the room, behind me, another version of myself. It wasn't a reflection. The angle was wrong. There was no window behind me to cast it. It stood with hands at its sides, watching the back of my head. Then it smiled. I tore my hands away from the window and spun around. The room was empty. I checked every corner, every shadow. Nothing. I was alone. But in the south window, I saw myself standing in the center of the room, hands at my sides, smiling. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't standing in the center of the room. The reflection turned and walked toward the desk. I watched it pull out the logbook we were required to maintain. Daily weather, notable observations, equipment status. The reflection opened it to a blank page and picked up the pen. I was still standing by the north window. I hadn't moved, but I felt my hand twitch, felt the muscle memory of writing activate in my fingers. The reflection began to write. I couldn't see the words from where I stood, but I could see the motion, steady, deliberate lines, a full paragraph. When it finished, it closed the logbook and looked up at me through the window. It mouthed 2 words, "Your turn." The compulsion was different this time. Not a pull toward action, but a pull toward completion, like an itch that demanded scratching, like a song stuck in your head that needed to be sung aloud to stop repeating. I walked to the desk. I opened the logbook. I picked up the pen. The page the reflection had written on was blank, but I knew what I was supposed to write. The words formed in my mind, fully shaped, like someone else's thoughts had been placed there. I wrote, "The glass shows me what I'm becoming. I see it more clearly each night. Soon there won't be a difference between what I am and what I see." My handwriting, my pen, my hand moving across the page, but not my words. I dropped the pen and slammed the logbook shut. My breathing was rapid, shallow. I looked at the windows and saw myself reflected in all 4 of them, standing at the desk, chest heaving. All 4 reflections were breathing in perfect synchronization, except the one in the east window. That one was holding its breath. I watched it. 30 seconds. 45. A full minute. My lungs started to burn, not because I was holding my breath. I was breathing normally, but because I felt the oxygen deprivation anyway. Phantom suffocation. The reflection in the east window finally exhaled and gasped for air. I gasped at the same moment, even though I didn't need to. That's when I understood what was happening. The reflections weren't showing me what I was about to do. They were learning me, studying my patterns, and slowly, they were teaching me to follow them instead. I spent the rest of that night sitting in the center of the tower with my eyes closed. I didn't look at the windows. I didn't check the reflections. I focused on my breathing and told myself I would wait for dawn, then radio for pickup. I was done. I didn't care about the dissertation, or the solitude, or finishing the season. I just needed to get out of the glass box before something in it learned me completely. But when dawn came and I opened my eyes, I saw what I'd written during the night. I didn't remember writing it, but the logbook was open on the desk, and my handwriting filled 3 pages. The same sentence, over and over. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. Hundreds of times, front and back of each page, written in the careful, steady script I used when I wasn't thinking about writing. I looked at the windows. All 4 reflections looked back. They smiled in unison. I grabbed the radio handset and called Carl. It was 05:30, earlier than the scheduled check-in, but I didn't care. Tower 9 to base. Come in. Static. Base, this is Tower 9. Do you copy? More static. Then Carl's voice, rough with sleep. Copy. Tower 9. You're early. Everything all right? I need pickup today. This morning. As soon as you can get here. A pause. You sick? No. I need to come down. What happened? I looked at the logbook, at the pages of repeated text, at the windows reflecting me from 4 angles. Nothing happened. I'm just done. Copy that. Weather's clear. I can be there by 0900. That work? Yes, thank you. Sit tight, Nathan. I'll see you soon. I hung up the handset and sat at the desk to wait. 3.5 hours. I could manage that. I didn't look at the windows. I kept my eyes on the desk, on my hands, on the surface of the wood, but I could feel the reflections watching me. At 0700, I did my scheduled check-in. Carl confirmed he was loading the truck. At 0800, I packed my boxes, clothes, books, laptop. I left the logbook on the desk, let the next lookout deal with it. At 0830, I heard the truck engine in the distance. I stood and walked toward the door. My reflection in the south window didn't move. I stopped. All my other reflections had frozen too. They stood at the desk while my actual body stood at the door. Then, in perfect synchronization, all 4 reflections walked toward the catwalk door. I wasn't moving, but they were. They opened the door and stepped outside. I watched them through the windows, walking the perimeter in formation. When they reached the north side, they stopped at the railing, and they climbed over it. The compulsion hit like a physical force. My hand reached for the door handle. My legs moved forward. I was going to follow them. I was going to walk outside and climb over the railing and step off into empty air because that's what the reflection showed me doing. I grabbed the desk leg and held on. My body pulled against my grip, muscles straining, but I didn't let go. Through the windows, I watched myself. 4 versions of myself stand on the wrong side of the railing. They didn't jump. They just stood there, balanced on the edge, waiting. The truck engine grew louder. My hand started to slip on the desk leg. Carl's voice came through the radio. Tower 9, I'm 2 minutes out. You ready? I couldn't reach the handset. I couldn't let go of the desk. I managed to croak out help, but I don't know if the radio picked it up. The reflections on the catwalk turned to face the windows. They watched me struggle. They didn't look angry or triumphant. They looked patient, like they had all the time in the world. I heard the truck door slam, footsteps on the stairs, Carl's voice from below. Nathan, you up here? Don't let me go outside, I shouted. The door opened. Carl stepped in, took one look at me clinging to the desk, then at the windows. Jesus, he said quietly. Do you see them? I asked. On the catwalk? He walked to the north window and looked out. There's nobody out there. Look at the reflections. He checked the glass, then looked at me. Nathan, I see your reflection. Just yours. You're standing at the desk. I'm not standing. I'm holding on. If I let go, I'm going to go outside. He moved closer, hands up in a calming gesture. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to help you to the door. We're going to walk down to the truck together. Can you do that? The reflections. Don't look at them. Look at me. I focused on his face. Weathered, real, concerned, human. "On 3, he said. 1, 2, 3. I let go of the desk. The compulsion yanked me toward the catwalk door, but Carl grabbed my arm and pulled me in the opposite direction. My body fought him, but he was stronger. He got me to the stairs and we stumbled down together, my legs trying to turn back with every step. When we reached the ground, the pull broke. I collapsed against the truck, gasping. Carl kept his hand on my shoulder. "You're all right. You're down. It's over." I looked up at the tower. In every window, I saw myself standing inside, watching us leave. 4 versions of me, perfectly still, waiting for me to come back. Carl helped me into the truck and we drove down the mountain in silence. When we reached the ranger station, he brought me inside and made coffee while I sat in a plastic chair and tried to stop shaking. "How long were you seeing things?" he asked finally. 4 days, maybe 5. He nodded. "Tower 9 has a history. We don't usually mention it during hiring because we need lookouts and most people are fine, but every few years, someone has a rough time up there." "What kind of history?" 2 suicides, both from the catwalk, both in October, 1998 and 2006. Different people, different circumstances. The official reports say isolation and depression, but both of them left notes that mentioned the windows. What did the notes say? That they saw themselves jump before they did it, that they were just following through. I felt cold spread through my chest. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Would you have taken the job? He sighed. We thought the new tower would help. Different structure, different glass. But maybe it's not the tower. Maybe it's the location. What's at that location? I don't know. The old-timers say the dark divide has always been strange, that the boundary between things gets thin up there, but that's just talk. I spent that night at a motel in Randall. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself standing at the railing. The next morning, I drove back to Seattle. I didn't finish my dissertation. I withdrew from the program officially and got a job doing data entry for an insurance company, cubicle work. Fluorescent lights, surrounded by people, no windows. I lasted 3 months before I quit. The lack of natural light was making me sick. I took a job at a coffee shop with big street-facing windows. That's when I started seeing it again. Not in the tower, in the shop windows, in car mirrors, in the black screen of my phone when it powered down. My reflection, moving half a second early, showing me what I'm about to do before I do it. It's subtle. Most people wouldn't notice, but I notice. And every day, the gap gets a little wider. The reflection gets a little further ahead. I've stopped looking in mirrors when I can avoid it. I cover the bathroom mirror when I shower. I keep my phone face down. But I can't avoid glass completely. We live in a world of reflective surfaces, and every time I catch my reflection, I see it learning me a little bit more. Last week, I saw myself walk in front of a bus before I stepped off the curb. I stopped in time, barely. Yesterday, I saw myself pick up a kitchen knife and turn it toward my wrist. I put the knife down and left the apartment for 3 hours. I'm writing this because I don't know how much longer I can keep stopping myself. The compulsion gets stronger every time the reflection shows me something. It's like the reflection is drawing a path and my body wants to follow it to the end. I called Carl last week and asked him what happened to the 2 people who died at Tower 9. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, they both called the day before, said they needed to come down. We told them we'd pick them up in the morning. But when we got there, they'd already gone over the railing, like they couldn't wait. Did their reflections show them jumping? How did you know that? Because mine showed me. And I'm starting to think it's going to keep showing me until I follow through. He asked where I was living. I told him Seattle. He was quiet again. Nathan, I need you to listen to me. Don't go up high. Stay on the ground floor. Stay away from bridges and balconies and anywhere you could fall from. The reflections, they seem to want completion. If they show you something, they want you to finish it. So don't give them the opportunity. I've been following his advice. I moved to a ground floor apartment. I take the bus instead of driving. I avoid stairs when I can. But this morning, I saw myself walk into traffic. I stopped, but my legs fought me. And tonight, in the black screen of my laptop, I saw myself typing these words before I wrote them, which means everything I'm writing now, the reflection already showed me. I'm not creating this. I'm following a script it laid out. I don't know how it ends. I mean, I do. I can see it in the dark screen right now, in the faint ghost of my face reflected in the glass. I can see what I'm about to do next. But I'm not going to write that part. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to close the laptop and walk away. I'm going to choose something the reflection hasn't shown me yet. I'm going to... They found Nathan Crowley's body in Volunteer Park 3 days after he stopped responding to messages. He was found at the base of the water tower observation deck. The fall was 75 feet. Security footage showed him climbing the stairs alone at 2 in the morning, standing at the railing for several minutes, then climbing over. What the footage also showed, though no one could explain it, was a strange doubling effect on the recording, like the image had buffered and duplicated. For 3 frames, there appeared to be 2 versions of Nathan standing at the railing, one behind the other, and the one in front went over the edge first. Technical analysis blamed a glitch in the camera system. The footage was logged as corrupted and filed away. His laptop was recovered from his apartment. The last document he'd been working on was a personal account about his time as a fire lookout. It ended mid-sentence. The final line read, "I'm going to. If you spend time alone in high places, if you work in towers or live in buildings with glass walls, pay attention to your reflection, not because it's going to hurt you, but because it's learning you. It's watching the way you move, the way you think, the patterns you follow without knowing you follow them. And if you watch it long enough, if you're isolated enough, it starts to show you things. Some of those things are true, some of them are suggestions. The trick is knowing which is which before your body decides to follow through." Carl Dennison retired from the Forest Service the following year. Tower 9 was closed permanently, the glass removed, the structure stripped to the frame. The official reason given was budget cuts. But if you hike up to that ridge now, you'll find something strange. The frame is still there, skeletal and empty, and on clear days, people report seeing a figure standing inside it. Always in October, always looking out toward the dark divide. The figure appears to be a man in his 30s. He stands very still, and if you watch long enough, you'll see him climb over the railing that isn't there anymore and step off into empty air. He never falls. He just stands there, suspended in space, waiting for someone else to climb that tower and see their reflection in glass that's been gone for years. Stay grounded. Stay away from mirrors when you're alone, and if your reflection ever moves before you do, don't follow it. Don't try to catch up, because once you start following, it becomes very hard to stop. If this story made you think twice about the glass around you, if it made you check your reflection a little more carefully, then you understand what I'm trying to say. The world is full of surfaces that show us back to ourselves. Most of them are harmless, but some of them are watching, some of them are learning. And if you enjoyed this descent into reflective terror, consider subscribing. There are more stories where this came from. More towers in the forest. More isolated places where the boundary between self and shadow gets dangerously thin. I'll keep telling them. You just have to keep listening. The logbook. I found the entry dated 3 days from now on my second morning at the tower, written in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. It said, "Day 5. Still can't find the door. The stairs keep leading back up. If you're reading this and you're me, don't trust the logbook. It's not recording what happened. It's deciding what will." Below that, in the same hand, "You won't listen. I didn't either. My name is Aaron Webb. I'm 31 years old. I took a fire lookout position at Copper Ridge Tower in North Cascades National Park because I needed the money and because the job description said minimal human contact. after managing a retail store through 2 holiday seasons and a pandemic. Minimal human contact sounded like a vacation. The job was October through November, the tail end of fire season when most towers shut down, but a few stay active to watch for lightning strikes and early winter storms. The pay was low, but it came with housing, and I had nothing better waiting for me in Bellingham except an efficiency apartment I could barely afford and a dating app that had stopped showing me matches. The ranger who hired me was a woman named Susan Morales, maybe 45, with the efficient manner of someone who had explained the same job 100 times. She drove me up the access road on a clear morning when the mountains looked so sharp against the sky they seemed fake. "You've got propane, canned goods, a rain barrel that's full, and a radio that works as long as you remember to charge the battery with the solar panel," she said. "You'll do check-ins twice a day, morning at 0800, evening at 2000. We need weather reports and smoke sightings. Everything else is optional." "What about the logbook?" I asked. I'd read the job description carefully. It mentioned maintaining a daily log. "It's in the tower. Just write down anything notable. Equipment problems, wildlife, weather events. Doesn't have to be fancy. We use it for records and to pass information to the next lookout." "How often do people read it?" She glanced at me. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. Seems like it'd be interesting. Reading what other people noticed up here. Most people don't read the old entries. They're too busy dealing with the present." She pulled into a small parking area where the road ended. "Tower's a half-mile hike from here. Straight up. You'll see the trail markers." We unloaded my gear, 2 duffel bags, a backpack, a box of books, and a cooler with perishables. She helped me carry the first load to the base of the trail, then handed me a key ring with 3 keys. Tower door, storage locker, and the propane shed. Radio's already on channel 7. If you have an emergency, switch to channel 9 and someone will respond. Questions? What happened to the last lookout? He finished his season, same as everyone else. But you're hiring in October. That's not normal, right? She looked at me for a moment longer than felt comfortable. The last lookout requested an early departure. Personal reasons. We need coverage through November 15th. Can you do that or not? I can do it. Good. I'll be back in 2 weeks with supplies. Don't burn the place down. She drove away before I could ask what kind of personal reasons made someone leave a paid job early with 3 weeks left in the season. The hike up took 40 minutes. The trail was steep and rocky, cutting through fir and hemlock that grew so close to the path you had to push branches aside every few yards. About halfway up, I passed a wooden sign that read, "Copper Ridge Tower, 0.5 miles, with an arrow pointing upward." Someone had carved something into the wood below the official text. I stopped to read it. "Turn back while you still can." It was old carving, weathered and dark with age. Probably some hiker's idea of a joke. I kept walking. The tower appeared suddenly as the trail broke out of the trees. It was the classic style. A small wooden cabin on stilts about 40 feet high, with a catwalk wrapping all 4 sides and stairs zigzagging up the support posts. The structure looked solid but old. The green paint faded to gray-green, the wood weathered but intact. I climbed the stairs slowly, testing each step. They creaked but held. The door at the top was locked. I used the first key and it opened easily. Inside was exactly what I expected. A 14 by 14 room with windows on all sides, a small desk, a chair, a cot against one wall, a propane stove and mini fridge in the corner, and a solar battery system mounted near the ceiling. In the center of the room, hanging from a pivot mount, was the Osborne Fire Finder, a circular metal device with a rotating sight used to pinpoint the location of smoke. On the desk sat a green, cloth-bound logbook. I set my gear down and walked to the desk. The logbook was thick, maybe 300 pages, with a leather tie holding it closed. I opened it to the first page. Copper Ridge Tower Daily Log. Begin date, the 1st of June, 1987. I flipped through. The entries were sporadic. Some years had daily notes. Other years had weeks of blank pages. The handwriting changed with each new lookout. Some neat, some barely legible, some filling entire pages with observations about weather and wildlife, others just writing clear, no smoke. I turned to the most recent entries. They were dated from this year, starting in June. The handwriting was small and precise, with the careful lettering of someone who took the job seriously. June 3rd. Clear morning. Visibility excellent. Spotted a black bear in the meadow to the northwest. Radio check-in. 0800 and 2000 as scheduled. July 15th. Thunderstorm moved through around 1400. 3 lightning strikes visible, all on distant ridges. No smoke. Checked for fires at dusk. Clear. August 23rd. Quiet week. Reading a lot. Haven't seen another person in 11 days. It's peaceful but also strange. You start talking to yourself without noticing. I kept reading. The entries continued through September with the same tone. Observant, routine, occasionally philosophical. Then I reached October. October 2nd. Something odd this morning. I wrote yesterday's entry before bed, like always. But when I woke up, there was another entry below mine in different handwriting. It was dated October 2nd, today. It said, clear morning, no smoke, saw a raven on the south catwalk. I haven't seen a raven yet. But I just looked outside and there's one sitting on the railing exactly where the entry said it would be. October 3rd. The logbook keeps doing it. I write my entry, then the next morning there's another entry dated for that day. It's like someone is writing tomorrow's log today. But I'm alone up here. I've checked every corner of this tower. There's no one else. The handwriting looks like mine but slightly different. Neater, maybe, or more tired. October 4th. I read ahead. I shouldn't have, but I did. There are entries dated for the next 3 weeks, all written in my handwriting, describing things that haven't happened yet. October 7th says, I'm going to drop the coffee pot and burn my hand. October 12th says, I'm going to see smoke to the east and call it in. October 19th says, I'm going to pack my gear and leave 3 days early. October 5th, I dropped the coffee pot this morning. The burn on my hand is exactly where the entry said it would be. October 6th, I tried ripping out the future pages. I tore out everything after today's date. When I woke up this morning, they were back. Same handwriting, same entries. The torn pages were in the stove, still ripped, but the logbook was whole again. October 7th, I'm leaving. I don't care what the entry for October 19th says. I'm packing now and hiking out. Whatever is writing in this book isn't me. Or it's a version of me I don't want to become. That was the last entry. October 7th, 3 weeks ago. I sat back in the chair and looked at the date. Today was October 26th. I flipped forward to the logbook, past blank pages, until I reached new handwriting. My handwriting. The first entry was dated October 26th, today. First day at Copper Ridge. The hike up was harder than expected. Found the previous lookout's entries about the logbook. He claimed it was writing the future. Obvious explanation is mental health crisis brought on by isolation. I'm not worried. I don't believe in supernatural nonsense. I stared at the page. I hadn't written that. I just arrived. I hadn't even unpacked yet. But it was my handwriting. The specific way I made lowercase a's. The slant of my letters. The way I dotted I's with small circles instead of dots. A habit I'd had since middle school. I turned the page. October 27th. Spent the first night listening to the tower creak. It's louder than I expected. Kept thinking someone was walking on the catwalk. Checked twice. No one there. Found myself staring at the logbook before bed, wondering if I should read ahead. Decided not to. Sleep was poor. October 28th. The temptation to read forward is getting stronger. I know there are entries for the next 3 weeks. I know I could find out what happens. But part of me doesn't want to know. Part of me thinks that if I read it, I'll make it come true just by knowing about it. I flipped ahead. The entries continued, dated sequentially, filling pages. my handwriting describing days I hadn't lived yet. I felt my chest tighten. This was a prank. It had to be. The previous lookout had somehow learned to forge my handwriting. Maybe Susan had sent him a sample of my application paperwork. Maybe this was some kind of hazing ritual for new lookouts. But how would he know I dotted my I's with circles? That wasn't visible in typed application forms. I turned to October 29th, tomorrow. I read ahead last night. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't stop myself. The entries describe everything. What I eat for breakfast, what time I do my radio check-ins, the books I read, the dreams I have, and they describe what happens on November 7th. My hands were shaking. I turned to November 7th. The entry was longer than the others. It filled an entire page in handwriting that looked like mine but messier, more frantic. November 7th, day 13. I tried to leave yesterday, packed everything, started down the trail, but the trail just kept going. I walked for 4 hours straight, always downhill, and ended up back at the tower. I tried again this morning, same result. The trail loops back on itself, or the tower moves. Or I'm moving in circles without realizing it. I can see the parking area from the catwalk. I can see my car, but I can't reach it. The ranger is supposed to come with supplies tomorrow. Maybe she'll be able to find me. Maybe the loop only affects me. I slammed the logbook shut and stood up. This was insane. I was letting some prank get into my head. The previous lookout had been having a breakdown and decided to mess with whoever came after him. That was all. I opened the logbook again and flipped to the last entry, November 15th, the day my contract ended. The page was blank. No, not blank. There was one sentence written at the top in handwriting so shaky it was barely legible. I'm still here. I closed the logbook and shoved it into the desk drawer. I wasn't going to read it again. I wasn't going to participate in whatever psychological game the previous lookout had set up. I unpacked my gear, set up my sleeping bag on the cot, and made dinner on the propane stove. At 2000 hours, I did my evening radio check-in with Susan. She confirmed receipt and asked how the first day went. Fine, I said. Everything's in order. You find the logbook? I hesitated. Yeah. Previous lookout left some strange entries, didn't he? You read it? I skim them when I do supply runs. His entries got weird toward the end. Started talking about the logbook predicting the future. Classic isolation paranoia. Don't let it get to you. I won't. Good. See you in 2 weeks. I hung up the radio handset and stared at the desk drawer. Don't let it get to you. Right. I spent the evening reading one of the paperbacks I'd brought. A thriller about a detective hunting a serial killer. Normally I'd be absorbed in it, but I kept losing my place, reading the same paragraph 3 times without processing the words. At 2200 hours, I gave up and got ready for bed. That's when I heard footsteps on the catwalk. I froze. The sound was unmistakable. Slow, deliberate footsteps moving along the wooden boards outside the north window. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the window. Nothing. The catwalk was empty. The forest below was dark and still. The footsteps moved to the east side of the tower. I ran to that window. Still nothing. South side. West side. The footsteps completed a full circuit around the tower and stopped at the door. I stood in the center of the room, flashlight raised, waiting for the door handle to turn. It didn't. The footsteps faded. I checked every window again. No one was outside. No one could be outside. The only way up was the stairs, and I would have heard someone climbing them. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Old building, wind moving through the support posts, acoustic tricks, perfectly normal. I climbed into my sleeping bag and turned off the flashlight. In the darkness, I heard the desk drawer slide open. I sat up and turned the flashlight back on. The drawer was closed. The room was empty. I got up, walked to the desk, and opened the drawer. The logbook sat exactly where I'd left it. I pulled it out and opened it to today's date, October 26th. Below my entry, the one I hadn't written, there was a new line. 2200 hours. Heard footsteps on the catwalk. Checked all windows. No one there. Drawer opened by itself. I'm reading this now. I dropped the book. It hit the floor and fell open to tomorrow's date, October 27th. I didn't want to read it, but my eyes found the text anyway. Second day. Barely slept. Kept hearing the drawer open and close all night. At 0600 I gave up and made coffee. That's when I noticed the entry for today had changed. It now says I'm going to fall on the stairs at 1300 hours. I won't break anything, but I'll twist my ankle badly. I'm going to be more careful. I'm going to prove the logbook wrong. I left the book on the floor and backed away. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. I climbed back into my sleeping bag and lay there, staring at the ceiling until gray light started seeping through the windows. At 0600, I got up and made coffee. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the pot. I caught it at the last second and set it carefully on the stove. The logbook was still on the floor where I dropped it. I picked it up and read today's entry again. At 1300 hours, going to fall on the stairs. Twist my ankle. I looked at the time. 6:15. I had almost 7 hours to prove it wrong. 7 hours to demonstrate that the logbook wasn't predicting anything, that it was just a bizarre coincidence, or a trick or a hallucination brought on by isolation I hadn't even experienced yet. I did my morning radio check-in at 0800. Susan asked if I'd slept well. Fine, I lied. The morning passed slowly. I tried to read. I tried to work on a crossword puzzle. I kept checking the time. 1200 hours. 1 hour left. 12:30. 30 minutes. At 12:55, I made a decision. I wasn't going to use the stairs. I wasn't going to give the logbook a chance to be right. I sat in the chair at the desk and watched the clock on my phone tick toward 1300. 12:59. 1300. I waited. Nothing happened. 13:05. Still nothing. I felt relief flood through me. I'd done it. I'd proven the logbook wrong. It was just The solar battery made a loud pop. I jumped up from the chair and spun toward the sound. Smoke was curling out of the battery casing mounted near the ceiling. Electrical fire. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall mount and ran toward the door. I had to get outside. Had to get to a safe distance before the battery fully caught. My boot caught on the corner of the sleeping bag I'd left on the floor. I pitched forward, hit the door frame with my shoulder, and tumbled out onto the catwalk. I felt my ankle twist as I fell. Sharp pain shot up my leg. I lay on the wooden boards, breathing hard. Fire extinguisher rolled against the railing. The smoke from the battery dissipated. False alarm. Just a loose connection popping. Not a fire. But my ankle throbbed with the specific pain of a bad twist. I pulled myself up using the railing and limped back inside. The logbook was open on the desk to today's date. Below the entry about falling on the stairs, there was a new line. 13:05. It happened. Not exactly like I expected, but close enough. I understand now. The logbook doesn't predict the future. It writes a version of events and then makes small adjustments to ensure it comes true. It's not reading what will happen. It's deciding. I grabbed a pen and wrote below that line in my actual handwriting, shaky and angry. This is Aaron, the real Aaron. I didn't write any of these entries. I don't know what's happening, but I'm not going to let a book tell me what to do. I set down the pen and waited. Nothing happened. I turned the page to October 28th. Tomorrow. The entry was already there, but now there was a new paragraph at the bottom. I tried to assert control today. Wrote a message to myself in the logbook. Thought I was being clever. But the entries don't stop just because I don't want them to. Tonight I'm going to read all the way to November 15th. I need to know how this ends. No, I said out loud. I'm not going to read ahead. I'm not. But my hand was already reaching for the logbook. My fingers were already flipping forward through the pages. I tried to stop. I tried to close the book. But my hands moved independently, turning pages, seeking November 15th. The final entry filled half a page. November 15th, day 21. The ranger never came. I've been rationing food, but I'm almost out. The trail still loops. I've tried marking trees, tried leaving supplies at the bottom to prove I'm making progress, but every path leads back to the tower. The logbook knows. It knew from the beginning. This isn't about predicting the future. It's about creating a closed loop, a story that writes itself by trapping the person living it. I don't think I can leave. I don't think anyone can leave once the logbook starts writing them. The previous lookout tried. His entries are here too, from October 2 years ago. He's still in the loop somewhere. Maybe we all are. Maybe the tower collects lookouts the way a spider web collects flies. I'm going to try one more time to hike out. If this entry is here tomorrow, unchanged, I'll know I failed. Below that, in fresher ink, it's still here. I slammed the logbook shut and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor. I was leaving. Right now. I didn't care what the entry said. I packed my essential gear into my backpack. Water, food, first aid kit, flashlight. I left everything else. I opened the door and stepped onto the catwalk. The stairs looked normal. Solid wood zigzagging down to the forest floor 40 feet below. I started down, testing each step, gripping the railing. My twisted ankle throbbed, but I pushed through the pain. First landing, second landing, third. The fourth landing should have been the last one before ground level. Instead, it led to another set of stairs going down. I stopped and looked up. The tower was still above me, the same distance it had been when I started. I continued down. Another landing, another set of stairs. The tower never got farther away. I counted 20 landings, 30, 40. I stopped counting and just climbed down, 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 until my legs burned and my ankles screamed and my lungs couldn't pull in enough air. When I finally collapsed on a landing, I looked up. The tower was still 40 feet above me. I looked down. The ground was still 40 feet below me. I was in the middle, always in the middle. I climbed back up. It took an hour. When I reached the top, the door was open and the logbook was on the desk. I walked inside and sat down. The logbook was open to today's date, October 27th. There was a new entry below the others, 1,500 hours. I tried to leave. The stairs loop now. I'm starting to understand. The tower doesn't want me to go. Or the logbook doesn't. Or they're the same thing. I'm very tired. My ankle hurts. I'm going to rest and try again tomorrow. I didn't write that, but it was true. The days blurred together after that. I stopped fighting. I did my radio check-ins. I ate. I slept. I read the logbook. Every morning there was a new entry for that day, describing exactly what I would do. And every day I did it, not because I wanted to, but because trying to do anything else was exhausting and ultimately futile. The logbook knew when I would drink water, when I would look out the south window, when I would think about trying to signal for help with the firefinder. It knew before I knew. On November 4th, Susan's voice came through the radio. Copper Ridge, this is base. I'm at the trailhead for your supply run. Weather's moving in, so I'm bringing everything up today instead of tomorrow. Be there in 30 minutes. I grabbed the radio handset. Susan, don't come up. The trail. Static. Susan, can you hear me? Don't come to the tower. Something's wrong with... The radio went dead. I checked the battery. Full charge. I tried every channel. Nothing but static. I ran to the north window and looked down at the parking area. Susan's truck was there. I could see her loading a backpack. I screamed. My voice carried, but she didn't react. She started up the trail. I ran to the stairs and climbed down as fast as my twisted ankle allowed. First landing, second, third. I was back at the door. I hadn't climbed down. I climbed up. I tried again. Down, down, down. Back at the door. I tried a third time, moving faster, not looking up. The door was in front of me. I opened the logbook. November 4th, 1,500 hours. Susan came up with supplies. She made it to the tower. We talked through the window. She couldn't open the door. The key didn't work from her side. She could see me inside, but when she tried the door, it wouldn't budge. She thought I was pranking her. I tried to explain about the logbook. She said I sounded paranoid. She left the supplies on the catwalk and told me to radio when I was feeling better. I watched her hike down the trail. It took her 20 minutes. She didn't loop. The stairs let her leave. I looked out the window. Susan was on the catwalk, setting down a supply box. She looked worried. I opened the door. She was 3 feet away. "Aaron, are you okay? You look awful. Can you see the logbook?" I asked. "What?" "On the desk. The green book. Can you see it?" She leaned to look past me. "Yeah, I see it." "Open it. Read today's entry." She gave me a strange look but stepped inside. I moved back to give her room. She walked to the desk and picked up the logbook. She flipped through it, frowning. "Aaron, these are all blank pages." "What?" She turned the book toward me. Every page was empty, clean white paper with no text. I grabbed it from her and flipped through. My hands were shaking. The entries were there. I could see them. October 26th through November 15th, all written in my handwriting. "You don't see any writing?" "No, it's completely blank." "I can see it. All of it. It describes everything that's happened and everything that's going to happen. Susan, I can't leave. The trail loops back. The stairs don't go down anymore. They just..." "Aaron, stop." She put her hand on my shoulder. "You're having a breakdown. It happens sometimes with isolation. You need to come down with me. Right now." "I can't. The trail won't let me." "There's nothing wrong with the trail. I just hiked it. Come on." She walked to the door. "I'm leaving the supplies here. You're coming with me." I followed her onto the catwalk. She started down the stairs. I watched her descend. First landing, second landing, third. She kept going. Fourth landing, ground level. She turned and looked up at me. "Come on, Aaron. Just walk down." I put my foot on the first step. The stairs shimmered. I blinked. Susan was back on the catwalk beside me. "Come on, Aaron. Just walk down." She started descending again. I watched her reach the bottom again. She turned and called up to me. I tried to step down. The stairs shimmered. She was beside me again. "Come on, Aaron." It was a loop. Susan was in a loop. Or I was seeing a loop. Or the tower was showing me a loop to make me understand I couldn't follow. The real Susan was at the bottom now, looking up at me with growing concern. "Aaron, what are you doing? Just walk." "I can't," I shouted. "Every time I try, I end up back at the top." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she pulled out her radio. "Base, this is Susan. I'm at Copper Ridge. The lookout is experiencing a psychological crisis. I'm going to need a helicopter extraction." She spoke to me, but I could barely hear her over the ringing in my ears. She said she was going to get help. She said she'd be back with a ranger and a medic. She said to stay in the tower and not to do anything. Then she hiked down the trail and drove away. I went back inside and opened the logbook. November 4th, 1700 hours. Susan called for an extraction, but they won't come. The weather's moving in. They'll wait until tomorrow. By tomorrow, I'll have read ahead to November 7th. By November 7th, I'll know what happens on the 15th. And once I know, I won't be able to change it. I flipped to November 7th. I know how it ends now. I read the final entry. November 15th, the day I'm supposed to leave. The entry says I'm still here. It doesn't say I'm dead. Just that I'm still here. Still writing. Still waiting for the next lookout to arrive so the logbook can start writing them too. I turned to November 15th. The entry was longer now. It filled the entire page. November 15th, day 21. The helicopter came this morning. I could see it circling. I waved from the catwalk. They saw me. They landed in the meadow below the tower. 2 rangers got out and started up the trail. I watched them hike. I counted the minutes. 20 minutes. 30. 40. They should have reached me by now. But they kept hiking, always the same distance away, like they were on a treadmill. After an hour, they turned around and hiked back down. The helicopter left. They never reached the tower. The radio's been silent since Susan left yesterday. I tried every channel. I can see the parking area from here. I can see cars come and go, but no one comes up the trail anymore. Or they try and the loop catches them. I'm not alone up here. The previous lookout is still here too. I found his entry from 2 years ago, November 15th. Same date, same words. I'm still here. And before him, someone else. November 15th, 4 years ago. Same words. The logbook goes back decades. November 15th appears over and over. Different handwriting. Same message. I'm still here. We're all still here. Every lookout who stayed too long. Every person who read ahead and learned they couldn't leave. The tower keeps us. The logbook writes us. And every November 15th, a new person arrives to take a job that never ends. I threw the logbook across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor, open to today's date. A new entry appeared as I watched, words forming in real time in my handwriting. November 4th, 1800 hours. I threw the book. It doesn't matter. I've already read to the end. I know what November 15th says. I know I'll still be here. The question isn't how to leave. The question is how to stop writing. But I don't think I can stop. The logbook won't let me. It needs me to write the days between now and the 15th. It needs me to fill in the story. So I'll write. I'll write every day. And on November 15th, when the next lookout arrives, I'll watch them from the window. I'll watch them find the logbook. I'll watch them read. And I'll watch them learn, like I learned, that some stories don't have endings. They just have loops. And we're all inside one. They sent a helicopter to Copper Ridge Tower on November 16th, after Aaron Webb missed 3 consecutive radio check-ins. 2 rangers and a medic hiked up the trail. It took 20 minutes. The tower was empty. Aaron's gear was scattered around the room, his sleeping bag on the cot, his backpack on the floor, a half-full coffee pot on the propane stove. The logbook was on the desk, open to November 15th. The page was blank. One of the rangers flipped through the book, looking for recent entries. Every page was empty. The logbook had never been used. They searched the area around the tower. They found no footprints leading away, no signs of distress, no indication that Aaron Webb had ever left. They expanded the search over the next 3 days. Dogs, volunteers, aerial surveys, nothing. The official report listed him as missing, presumed lost in the wilderness. The case remained open for 2 years, then was quietly archived. Susan Morales retired from the Forest Service 6 months later. She never took another supply run to Copper Ridge. The tower remained staffed, though. Jobs needed filling, people needed work, and every October, someone new would arrive, hike up the trail, unlock the door, and find a green logbook on the desk. Most of them never opened it, but some did. And if you're reading this, if you're considering taking a fire lookout job in a remote tower somewhere in the Cascades or the Rockies or the Sierras, let me offer you some advice. When you find the logbook, don't read ahead. Don't look for entries dated after today. Don't try to learn what happens tomorrow or next week or on the last day of your contract. The future isn't meant to be read like a story, and some stories aren't meant to have readers. They're meant to have participants. If you find entries that haven't happened yet, close the book. If you find entries written in your handwriting describing things you haven't done, leave immediately. Don't pack. Don't radio for permission. Just walk down the trail and don't look back. And if you find an entry dated November 15th, no matter what year, no matter whose handwriting, run. Because that's the page that never changes. That's the page where every story ends the same way. I'm still here. I'm telling you this because fire season starts again in June, because towers across the country need staffing, because the pay is decent and the solitude is appealing and the job description makes it sound like a peaceful escape from the noise of modern life. It is peaceful. It is quiet. But some places are quiet because nothing leaves. Stay aware. Stay skeptical, and if you ever find yourself in a tower with a logbook that knows too much, remember that you have a choice. You can close the book, you can walk away, you can refuse to participate in a story that's already been written. Just don't wait too long to make that choice. Because once you read to the end, once you see your own handwriting describing your own future, it becomes very difficult to write a different ending. I learned that the hard way. So did Aaron Webb. So did every lookout who came before him. So, if you enjoyed this story, if it made you think twice about taking that remote job or reading too far ahead in any book that seems to know more than it should, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this waiting. More towers, more logbooks, more loops that tighten the longer you stay inside them. I'll keep telling them. You just have to keep listening. And whatever you do, don't read ahead.